What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Discovering Bob Dylan podcast. I'm Joe. I'm discovering Bob Dylan. He is Dylan Seavey. He is teaching Bob Dylan. And we are listening through the entire discography of Bob Dylan, front to back. And we have reached the end of the 1960s, the final album of the decade from Bob. We're on Nashville Skyline. Before we jump into things, Dylan, how are you? I've been kind of skipping that whole talking to you aspect in these intros lately, so I figured I'd bring you in early here.
Well, it's good. I definitely think that we should create some sort of narrative here that you and I don't actually talk on the outside of this. It would be like I think that's how Penn and Teller are. I think that's how Adam and Jamie on MythBusters were. But no, alas, we do talk, and I assure that everyone out there, assure everyone out there that Joe, I think, actually does care about me. But I'm doing well. I'm
Yeah, I need
very
this. I need this series to continue, so I'm hoping you pull through. You just keep coming back. I can't cancel it now. We're in too deep.
Oh no, we are just getting into the best part of it. I'm so excited for today. I'm so excited for our next episode. We got a lot of cool stuff coming up.
Well, that is true. Back to the Dylan aspect, the Bob Dylan aspect. We are at the end of the 60s, end of the decade. We've seen Bob Dylan invent multiple styles of music. He's invented new ways for a musician to express themselves via music. Put out half dozen classic albums. He's up there with the Beatles, the Stones, Beach Boys, maybe Hendrix, as the artists of the decade. And even before this series, I don't think I could ever claim that Bob Dylan wasn't just an absolute, monster in this decade. So what does he give us for an encore? He gives us a goddamn country rock album. And I think that's great. I do think the fact that, you have the assassination of Martin Luther King and Robert F. Kennedy and all this turmoil going on. Like this is like where Dylan was needed most. And he's just like happy raising a family, doing some duets with Johnny Cash and doing country rock. It's a really I mean, it's like he couldn't have planned it any better to be again doing like the opposite of what everyone expected and what everyone wanted him to do. And I think back in the day there was some, consternation from the critics and stuff like, we need you now, Dylan. But he's like, nah, I'm just gonna do this country rock stuff. So this album may have been less received well by the critics back in the day, but it sold really well. The public seemed to like his country stylings and bunch of songs, singles, three singles, all did pretty well on the radio as well. What do you think of Nashville Skyline and how it relates to the Dylan mythos and all that crap? I mean, this is like the one album where there's not as much mystery around it. Like it seems
Mhm.
almost straightforward compared to what he'd been doing, the entire rest of the decade.
Yeah, well, like I've discussed in the last couple episodes, yeah, I view this as a part of this string of albums that find Bob exploring his own identity in the aftermath of his huge mid-60s celebrity. With John Wesley Harding, he was tapping a lot into these character studies, using a lot of biblical connotations, and towards the end of the album, hinting at the domesticity that he was surrounded by, craving more of. And that was kind of more reflected in that album's very down home instrumentation and production. Um, and now on Nashville Skyline, he's scrapped the character studies. He's adopted a character of his own and connecting with another side of himself, pun completely intended. And yeah, I mean, I love this quote from Chris Christopherson, which I had, I forget where I originally read it, and I'd been searching for it for like 3 days leading up to this episode. And I finally found it on friggin' Wikipedia of all places. So but he says about this, our generation, he's talking about this generation of country musicians, our generation owes him, Bob, our artistic lives because he opened all the doors in Nashville when he did Blonde on Blonde and Nashville Skyline. The country scene was so conservative until he arrived. He brought in a whole new audience. He changed the way that people thought about it. Even the Grand Ole Opry was never the same again. Which, I mean, to come from him, Chris Christopherson, I mean, that's large praise. And the thing is, Nashville Skyline is so often discussed as a novelty. People either just treating it like a genre exercise or talking about like, oh my God, listen to, his voice is so different that you don't realize, I think, how important it actually is. And for me personally, I think I occasionally forget how much I really like it. I think it's really satisfying to hear Bob exploring this sound further after those last two songs on John Wesley Harding, and really just the pared down nature of that album in general. I think sonically it's a great success, awesome production from Bob Johnston, monster Nashville session musicians elevating each song to a higher level. You've brought back Charlie McCoy, Kenny Buttrey, and Pete Drake from John Wesley Harding. And now you're adding guys like Norman Blake, Charlie Daniels, Bob Wilson, absolute legends in their fields. And I love the soundscapes that they produce. And I've got a lot of thoughts on the songs themselves. But as always, I want to hear where you're at with it because I have a feeling, but we didn't have a sour taste in our mouth last episode, but like you said, it was, John Wesley Harding was kind of that first moment since we started where you kind of hit that wall of like, oh, this thing that I've always sort of assumed I'm kind of feeling it here, and it's like I don't necessarily feel like, oh, we gained up all this momentum and now it's crashed to a halt. But it's there's somewhat of a roadblock there. So yeah, where are we at?
Well, like I said in the last episode, I'd heard this one before, listened to it, got into country rock pretty hard 8 to 10 years ago or so. And maybe I wasn't ready for this. I wasn't ready for Bob Dylan's voice back in the early days of my musical education there. I think there are three truly great songs on this album, six good to very good songs on this album, and one charmingly lousy song on this album. Do you, which one do you think I think is charmingly lousy?
Is it my beloved Country Pie?
No, no.
Okay, because Country Pie is one of I wouldn't say one of the most maligned songs in his catalog, but it's definitely one that people throw out, like talking about his throwaway stupid songs or whatever. I love Country Pie. Actually, the first time I ever saw Bob, he played Country Pie in the year 2000, which is awesome. My least favorite song is Peggy Day. Is that the one you're talking about?
No, I like Peggy Day fine. I'll just tell you what it is. It is the leadoff track, Girl from the North Country, duet with Johnny Cash.
I've got so many thoughts, but yes, you
Okay.
start.
That is the only one. I think it's a cute duet, and they almost pull it off.
Cute.
And then at the end, they're trying to harmonize with each other, and they're just so far off that it's just like, oh, you guys should have taken that over. And I just don't think it's necessary, and it doesn't really fit on the album. And immediately after it, you get the instrumental Nashville Skyline Rag, which feels like the introduction because Dylan's like, okay, you take a solo, you take a solo, you take a solo, Charlie Daniels, Pete Drake, you do some stuff on the pedal steel there. It's a weird start to the album with Girl from the North Country, a re-recording of his own song, charmingly off key with Johnny Cash, and then this instrumental. But after that, I think it is a real solid album. I like it more than I did in the past, for sure. I I feel like Girl from the North Country was always a stumbling block for me because it just right off the gate, I think it's maybe his least successful vocal performance on the album as well. Like it's a little more exaggerated because once that was over with, I really didn't mind his voice at all. I didn't think it was out of place, that weird tenor he's doing it. It's not perfect. It's not, with country and country rock, I really like having a strong, like a really strong singer. And even, at his best, I think he's an average singer in that style. But I think he puts his heart into it. He hits some notes that I didn't think he could hit. And overall, I think he pulls it off with aplomb. No real problems with the vocals this time. The band, obviously, like you said, hot, hot, hot. Pete Drake, incredible pedal steel. Charlie Daniels and Norman Blake. And I was reading through my big Bob Dylan book, and basically nobody knows who was playing what. They were just all kind of doing whatever because they're all so good. And there's some unnamed session players and a whole bunch of other stuff. It doesn't matter because everyone who's playing sounds real good. Got some great piano across the whole darn thing. After Girl from the North Country and that kind of exaggerated vocals, I think Dylan's vocals are a lot less like stark. It's like they kind of blend in a little bit better, kind of right off the bat with To Be Alone with You. He sounds like a country singer, not like a great country singer, but he's channeling like that aura and that mix of happiness. He is a little happier on here. He's more relaxed. I think he's more content. And there's a couple Suspicious Mind type songs where it's like, hey, my lady's cheating on me, but that is classic country, and I think it sounds pretty good. Really like the honky tonk piano from Bob Wilson on To Be Alone with You. Kind of, it doesn't sound too much like country. It's almost like a late 50s rock and roll style, but not, I think it's maybe his best example of that sort of cribbing from that era that I've heard yet. I threw it all away. Beautiful. One of my three favorite songs on here. Love the organ. Love the pick and guitar work. It's another one that's, this is his country rock album, but this one sounds really Beatlesy to me, like really George Harrison, sort of in the melody. That lift in the bridge is really nice. And I think Dylan's vocals, I wrote that they might be my favorite Dylan vocals yet. And I think it's just the way he just puts it all into that song. And that bridge especially, he's hitting some notes I didn't think he could do. Peggy Day, simple and sweet, little bluesy turnaround at the end. It's got a little doo-wop 50s flavor to it. You got that pedal steel, which is nice. Lay Lady Lay, maybe more of that exaggerated vocal that I don't love, but you got that great pedal steel, that cool drum work. It's like bongos or it's something different. I'm not sure. You're the drummer, you can tell me what it is. But Country Pie, I think is real fun. You're saying it's often maligned. I guess it's the hot dog of Bob Dylan's huge catalog. But I think it's great. It's got some real nice blues licks in there, a nice melody in the vocals. It ends way too abruptly. So something like probably fell over in the studio or something like, we got to fade that out real quick. But while it's playing, it's great. You got the Hank Williams kind of tribute, One More Night, nice classic country jaunt there. Tell Me That Isn't True. Was him supposedly sort of cribbing from Elvis a little bit. Got the real nice organ sound in there. Outro with the band kind of getting the spotlight is real nice. And Love Tonight I'll Be Staying Here With You. Incredible pedal steel, great piano. Feels the most country of all the songs, like, real classic country sound to it. And I think just overall in general, the band's great. The lyrics are pretty straightforward. They're pretty, he's doing a very good job of just being, a country singer. He's not doing the psychedelic ramblings. He's not, doing parables from the Bible. There's not any like great, you know, metaphors that you have to dig to discover. It's very kind of out there and just hard on your sleeve, and it works with the music. It's charming and nice, and it's 26 minutes long. It could be longer. I don't think I'd ever say this about a Dylan album, but I could have used a couple more songs here. But overall, I think it's real good. It's hovering right around 4.5 stars. It's somewhere high fours, low 4.5s. We're getting to the point now where I kind of have to like go back and re-listen to everything to see where things fall, and if if something might fall to four, something might raise to five. It's getting a little jumbled, high four, low 4.5 star range. So
Real DJ Khaled suffering from success here.
yeah, it's up. But I like this very much, much more than I remembered, especially once you get past that awkward duet with Johnny Cash. It really just excellent work all around.
So what were the other two? You said you had three big standouts. I threw it all away.
My
What were the
three
other
my three
two?
big ones, Lay Lady Lay, because it feels the most like classic Dylan, like he's saying maybe a little bit more than the lyrics lead on. It's got some maybe some riddles locked away in there. Tonight I'll be staying here with you, and I threw it all away. Or the big three, which you'll probably be able to find all three on my top 20 songs of the 1960s that might be coming out between now and Self-Portrait.
Oh man. I'm so happy. We are back on track. We love this. We love to see it. We love to see the personal growth within you, Joe. And I'm with you on a lot of this. If our friend Ryan Kramzer is keeping tabs on this channel, he's going to be horrified because I have also never loved the Girl from the North Country duet with Johnny Cash. It's a fantastic song, obviously, but it's not as good as the original. And it's always just kind of felt like forced and unnatural to me. Like, it seems like this attempt to push the album's vibe or intent on the listener way more than necessary. Like, I think it's cool to hear them singing together, and I don't hate it, but I don't know. I always wish that To Be Alone with You or Nashville Skyline Rag kicked off the album instead. I think the instrumental would have set the vibe or the intent perfectly fine without seeming as I don't want to say ham-fisted, but I don't know. It doesn't work for me. But everything else, I mean, To Be Alone with You, great, like you said, kind of groovy rock and roll country tune. That's another one. I've gotten to see him play that one live quite a few times. It always sounds great there. Yeah, I love Bob's vocal delivery. I think that Bob's voice is kind of the glue that holds, this whole sound together. And yeah, his lyricism is even more straightforward than it was on John Wesley Harding. But I don't think it suffers at all. I think that Lay Lady Lay deserves all the praise it gets as this kind of gorgeous plea of seduction and longing. I've always viewed Tonight I'll Be Staying Here With You as like the sister song to I'll Be Your Baby Tonight. Um, just a really, not the Whitney Houston, I'll Be Your Baby Tonight, the Bob Dylan, I'll Be Your Baby Tonight. Yeah, just a great candid piece of songwriting. Not my favorite version of it, though. The Rolling Thunder Review 1975 is a legendary Bob Dylan performance, and that Tonight I'll Be Staying Here With You is whew. But yeah, I threw it all away. I'm with you. One of the finest kind of heartbroken ballads that he'd written up to that point. Yeah, really, really great vocal there. I think that One More Night is this really, it's just this great, like breezy, forlorn number. And that's another one where the combination of this, distinctly different voices singing in combined with that melody, just tonight, no light will shine on me. Like it's so simple, but it's so effective. My favorite track on the record is Tell Me That It Isn't True. I think the band on this song cooks so hard. Like you said, that the instrumental outro, Bob Wilson on the piano is absolutely incredible. Another fantastic melody, just great melodies across the whole record, really, I think. And even the ones, stuff like To Be Alone with You and Country Pie, like, yeah, they're not these huge pop songs, but they're, they're just they're fun. And I normally shy away from using that word. Not that there's anything wrong, obviously, with fun music, but I generally find that like 97% of music that people describe as fun is music that I can't stand. Um, but those songs to me are fun. Yeah, I there's very little for me not to like here. And I think that there's more than enough artistic integrity on this record between the songwriting, the arrangements, the performances, his vocal. I think there's a lot of that it really elevates it above it just being like a genre exercise. Um, and I think that's reflected by the reception that it received. Like I said, like from a lot of the stalwarts in the country music scene. I referenced the Chris Christopherson quote earlier. Obviously, Johnny Cash felt similarly enough for him to be on the friggin' record. What I didn't know until our overlord Wikipedia told me today is apparently that he and Dylan had been talking about him doing a country record for a few years up to this point. So, I mean, it just goes to show like the cachet that this guy had was, like it could have been so easy, I think, for a lot of, rock stars or pop stars to, try to break into this world and be met with hesitation. I mean, you read some of the stories about like when Nitty Gritty Dirt Band, were getting Will the Circle Be Unbroken together, and they were talking to all the super old school, Roy Acuff and all those guys, and they were hesitant at first, like, what the hell are these friggin' hippies trying to do with our music? But the fact that the real stars of the day saw Bob as an equal, um, I think that really speaks to how great the album is, and certainly how great he was and still is.
Yeah, I mean, that was Bob Dylan's influence, definitely important. And the fact that Johnny Cash really stood up for him was important because, the Byrds tried to get into Nashville a year before, and they were completely rejected with Sweetheart of the Rodeo. Just it did not fly. Thought, Graham Parsons was just like a
Birds fly. Very,
yeah,
very good.
I meant to do that. They really didn't like Graham Parsons, and they were just, said no, basically. But you have someone like Dylan, who's, critical standing and, popularity. The Byrds were kind of on the way down and out. Dylan was still a big player, a big name. And the fact that he was able to come in with Johnny Cash and be like, I'm just going to do this country, and you're going to like it because I'm Bob Dylan and this is Johnny Cash. And it worked. I mean, it really did knock down some doors for the whole country rock movement. And even though it's not my favorite example of country rock, I'm a huge Graham Parsons fan, a huge Gene Clark fan, and what they were doing before this and around the same time. I definitely still prefer that, but I definitely don't think Bob is some like carpetbagger trying to steal the country sound. He's right up there with everybody else, and the band definitely helps that, and just the songwriting and his commitment to classic country sounds and classic country songwriting and lyricism really works. And I no longer think this album is kind of a weird right turn after a left turn, or whatever John Wesley Harding was. This is a Bob Dylan I can appreciate. And it's very charming, I have to say. Even the picture, him on the front, looking down at the camera, kind of do dossing his cat, dossing his hat, whatever it's called. Forget the term, but holding the guitar, looking charming, looking happy. It's a good look. It's a good album. Yeah, now I can only assume that this trend of good albums will continue into 1970. I have no reason to think otherwise.
Oh, buddy, self-portrait. Oh my God. I'm so excited. I forget which album it was, but I think the advice I gave to you going into a previous album that we talked about, keep in mind going into it, remember that Bob achieved exactly what he was trying to achieve. I'm going to give you the same advice here for self-portrait. Whatever was in his head that he wanted to make happen, he made it happen. And I will also say, I have no idea whatsoever to expect from you because in some ways, yes, self-portrait is as batshit insane that it's been made out to be. But it's also, it's not like Metal Machine music or Two Virgins or even, your beloved late era Boston records. It is very distinctly a folk rock country blues record, nothing atypical of what Dylan had done before. There are certain things that you haven't heard yet. The first song in particular is about as much of a curveball as you can get. Have you heard All the Tired Horses yet, or is this going to be totally
I have heard nothing off this album, I don't think at all. Not one
okay?
moment of it.
So the first song in particular, it's you're jumping right into the fire, but the reputation that this record has garnered in the initial reception that it received are definitely worth revisiting, if not fully recorrecting. I don't know if I said it to you privately or if I said it on one of these shows. Like, I genuinely feel like we could be getting a a 2-star review or genuinely like a surprise 4 bordering on 4.5. Like, I think it could be anything in between. I don't know. I'm so excited. Um, and and there's so many aspects I think of being a huge Dylan fan, um, that I think are just tied back to the fascination of him and his artistry. Um, and regardless of what you think of this record, regardless of how much you end up liking it or not, um, I'm really hoping that at the end of it, even if you think it's terrible, you'll go, okay, I can understand why people are so fascinated by this guy because it does go beyond the 60s. It goes beyond like, let's, comb the lyrics of It's All Right, Ma and Stuck Inside a Mobile. That stuff is awesome. That stuff is worth it. That stuff is great. But I think very few true Dylan fans think that it ends there. Like, the fascination goes all the way up until 2024 and certainly through 1970. So I hope that you'll be able to key in on that fascination.
Well, I'm pretty excited for Self-Portrait because I feel like we're free from the 60s, and that's sort of like a burden to like really love everything that Bob Dylan did in the 60s. Like that's off. We've gone through the classic period. I like it. I like Bob Dylan. Like that problem has been solved. Um, and now we have the 70s where it's a little freer. Anything could happen. I'm not nearly as familiar with any of this stuff as I am with the 60s stuff. So it's going to be wild, wild happenings from here on out, at least for the next couple, while we get through Self-Portrait and New Morning and that weird Dylan compilation, illegal, whatever the hell that was in 73. So, and then we'll get in, the Christian rock stuff, and we got Blood on the Tracks and Desire. So it's gonna get crazy. It's the 70s. No rules. No rules at all. Okay, so that's good. We'll do self-portrait next time. Maybe a surprise top 20 songs of the 60s episode. Hint, hint.
It's not really a surprise.
Not a surprise anymore. It's definitely happening, and we've announced it.
It's confirmed. It is on the
Confirmed.
books.
Confirmed. So look forward to that. And I think we're good here. I think we're done with the 60s. We're ending on a happy note here. What do you think? Not you, Dylan. The people out there. What do you think of Nashville Skyline? Is it just kind of a funny detour into country rock? Is it something greater? Is it a fitting end to his 60s output? let us know in the comments. And don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell for notifications, check out our Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Patreon. Become a patron for pennies a day. I think it's 3.5 pennies a day. You can join the patrons and check out our Discord as well. We're always doing fun stuff. Dylan makes appearances. He's a valued, treasured member of our Discord community. And that's it. That's all for the 60s. We'll see you in the 70s. Well, that 160s top 20 songs. We're okay. We're almost to the 70s. We got one more in the 60s, and then we're off to the 70s.
You always stick the landing on these
These
outros
outros.
here.
I got to work on my outros. Soon, though, soon the 70s and self-portrait, and we're gonna have a lot of fun there. So continue to check back weekly right here on Taste Like Music. We'll see you next time.